Hello, welcome to Inner Mind Online. This is Jaime Licauco broadcasting from Paranaque City. I know we have not been broadcasting for the last several months because we were concentrating on seminars and all that, but we felt that we should continue this. I will be talking about what happens to us after death, what is in the afterlife. I will be reading an article I wrote called Glimpses of the Afterlife, which I wrote, would you believe, in April 1977. That's how long it is. You see, my articles are of lasting value because they are not what you call it, tied to a specific historical event, but to perennial philosophy, meaning those eternal truths, no? And people have been asking about higher consciousness, about non-ordinary reality, about paranormal phenomena, psychic phenomena, and those things that are beyond science and religion. Okay, so uh, I hope that you will stay with me for it's just about maybe 10 minutes, at most 15 minutes, and then you may ask questions afterwards, and we welcome questions from you. Okay, glimpses of the afterlife. The fear of death is one of the most dreaded fears of mankind. In an attempt to avoid or forestall it, man has devised many rituals, beliefs, and philosophies. The classic search for the elixir of life or the elixir of youth was an attempt to delay as much as possible the coming of death. All religions teach that we should not fear death because it is a mere transition into the intention of consciousness, into another plane of consciousness. Okay, so it is not something that is the end of things. Sandali lang ha. Let me just pause for a while because there is some noise here. Uh, there is a noise here we can hear. So please keep quiet while we are broadcasting. Thank you. Okay. So let's continue this in the quiet, hopefully, till the end. Uh, the ancient masters teach that the human mind possesses all the faculties necessary for the understanding of all the mysteries of life and of the universe. It only needs to attune itself to the inner reality or inner promptings, or maybe to intuition, to realize the truth of higher forces, such as the existence of the spirit, that some people deny, and even that transcendent being called God. It is man's concentration on the material world that has dulled his higher faculties. You know, in ancient times, we had a better grasp of the spirit world, telepathy, clairvoyance, recognition, and all that. We have lost this. Modern, modern people have lost these faculties, but we still have them in potential and can be developed. In time, however, man's inner spiritual or man's lower physical nature will be conquered, and man will again attain knowledge of the higher world with ease, just as he did in the days of the ancient Atlantis and Lemuria. But no one can force understanding on another. When the mind is ready for the higher truths, it will it will receive and understand them without too much of an effort. As the ancient teachings say, in the hall of learning, when the student is ready, the teacher or master will come. In time, the proof he seeks will come as surely as the day, as surely as the night follows the day. Why do we fear death? Mainly because it's an unknown territory. We fear anything we don't know about. We fear the unknown. In the words of Shakespeare in Hamlet, death is that undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, and therefore puzzles the will. There are many conflicting views on the question of death. What has aggravated the fear among the Christian world, especially in the church teaching of eternal damnation and the pains of the so-called hell for those who commit grievous sins on earth. Somehow it is difficult to reconcile the theory of eternal damnation with the merciful and omniscient God. Death may not be that frightful if we would but try to see it for what it is. It is without the histrionics and threats of the hellfire prevalent in contemporary religious teachings. What do most people understand by death? To many, death means the time when the soul separates from the body. To the scientist, it is the point when there are no more vital processes or vital activities registering in their machines. For example, no more brainwave, zero brainwave, and zero heartbeat, zero pulse. That is seen as the ultimate end of man. And when he dies, he can never be seen nor heard from again. He will never come back. He is gone forever. Gone where? Nobody knows. Either in heaven, purgatory, or hell, says the Christians. Say the Christians. The Red Indians will say the soul has gone to its happy hunting ground. This view is nearer the truth. When a person is still alive, he can be seen, touched, smelled, heard, measured, weighed, etc. He can sing, laugh, cry, walk, talk, and run. He can create as well as destroy. He can love as well as hate. In short, his aliveness is based on what can be seen from his corporeal or material nature. Man is commonly defined as a being with a physical body and a spiritual soul. That is the result of the soul's leaving the body. Others even deny the existence of the soul. Defined in this way, man really has every reason to fear death. The Oriental occult scientists and philosophers define man differently. Ancient Oriental philosophy teaches that man is basically a spirit. And when he is born, he becomes an embodied soul. Some say that man is a soul imprisoned by the body. This view is shared by both Plato and Socrates, the two great ancient Greek philosophers. The birth of man on earth is really the death of the soul. as a pure spirit. Let me repeat that. The birth of man on earth is really the death of the soul as a pure spirit. So that the physical death of man is regarded merely as the continuation of the spirit's existence in the spirit world. If we look at it this way, that is, that the passing of man from this earth means his rebirth in the spirit world, then there is no such thing as death. That becomes an illusion. There is only transition from one state of being to another state. What we call so fearfully as death is merely a transition along the eternal journey of man to fulfill his destiny, to unfold his powers and to perfect himself. That is the goal. It is not the end of life, but a step to another stage of life. Why are we so preoccupied in knowing about death, as Jiddu Krishnamurti, when we do not even know so much about living? How do we know if death is but another aspect of life? This reminds me of what Socrates also said during his when he was incarcerated and he was condemned to die by drinking the poison hemlock, and the people around him were crying, and I said, "Why are you crying? If I go to the other side, you don't know what it is. Maybe it's better than what we have here. So I don't know. Maybe I'll have a chance to see what it is like. But since we do not know, then we should just wait and find out." So that's what Socrates said, which is similar to what Krishnamurti is saying. Why are we so concerned about death when we don't even know how to live? There's the description of life after death. In order to know what it's like to be dead, it will help to investigate or recount the experiences of those who have gone to the other side and have come back to relate what happened. It is worthy to note that in these experiences, those who have gone temporarily to the other side, the astral plane, never want to come back to earth. They regret that they are not dead. They experience a certain bliss or happiness not found on earthly existence. Because of this, some occultists believe that hell is really not found in the afterlife, as taught by certain religions. It is to be found here on earth. There was a philosopher who said, hell is other people. I think it's Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist philosopher, who said that. It is to be found here on earth, for we make our own heaven or hell. Gordon Burdick of Vancouver, Canada, who suddenly died of heart attack in September 1957, described the world of the dead to his fiancée, Grace Rocher, through automatic writing. The handwriting that came automatically out of Rocher's hand, as she held the pen lightly, were confirmed to be that of Burdick. Burdick's description of the afterlife, for what occultists variously refer to as the astral world or the Elysian field, generally conform to the teachings of occultism and ancient wisdom. By the way, the word occult has two meanings. The popular meaning of occult is has something to do with witchcraft and evil and those things. But the word occult simply means, in its objective definition, simply the hidden world. The occult is hidden, or hidden knowledge. That is the occult sciences. There's nothing bad about it. It's just the term occult has been used in a very negative way by modern man, and therefore it has been contaminated. So if you say that you're an occultist, they think you're practicing witchcraft, which is not true. An occultist is a very high knowledge of the spirit world. Okay, so that's important definition. Mhm. To recount the experiences. Now, where am I? Okay. Some of the letters of those who have died in the series Life After Death by Robert Caldwell, Doctor of Medicine, Doctor of Philosophy, which appeared in a local paper in early 1975. I have added a few explanatory comments to make things a little clearer. So I quote, some of the letters that describe how Gordon had fallen asleep in his bed in Vancouver, that is in Canada, and awakened in a beautiful garden with flowers that were like enormous jewels. He had no idea where he was until he saw his mother and several of his brothers and sisters, arms outstretched, coming toward him. Then he knew that he was dead. At first, some of the scripts said Burdick regretted having left Earth and being separated from his fiancée. It was his mother who reassured him by pointing out that communicating with the living, although difficult, was not impossible. Gordon said that he decided to try it. The automatic writing of Grace Rocher was the result of this attempt of the fiancé to communicate. The world described in the script is very much like this one. In general terms, it accords with what many other respected mediums have described. It is a type of existence in which mental states are translated into objective reality, meaning what you think becomes a reality. If you think of an apple in front of you, the apple will appear in the astral world. If you think of being in Japan or Russia, well, not Russia, gulo ngayon dun. It will be there in an instant because the astral world is the desire world when you go to your whatever you desire to be. Okay, let's continue. Where people create their own environment of reality. Gordon Burdick said he was on the first plane of spirit, or in the spirit world there are planes of existence. No, I understand from the occult literature that there are 7 planes of existence, and each plane is subdivided into further 7 subplanes. So there are maybe 49 different planes of existence in the afterworld. And I think that's what Christ meant when he said, in my Father's house are many mansions, and I go to prepare a place for you. Think about it. This first plane of spirit existence just slightly beyond the earth plane. Beyond this were at least 6 other higher spheres. Say 7, 6, others say 7. There were also several sub-levels, depressed areas. There's water din dun. In the astral world, whatever we think becomes a reality. It is just like what happens in dreams. If we think of a particular person while dreaming, he or she suddenly appears in the dream. If we think of riding in a bus, we suddenly find ourselves in the bus. That is what also happens in the astral world. Those who are religious will find this strikingly similar to the description in Genesis in the Bible. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, etc. Under such a state of affairs, the responsibility of each man becomes awesome and great. If he thinks evil things, they will materialize before him. If he tells a lie, people will know he's lying. According to occultists and mystics, there are 7 planes in the astral world. Each plane is further subdivided into 7 subplanes, which is what I said earlier. After death, Burdick reported people gravitate to the plane which corresponds to their level of spiritual development. Ayun. Okay? In this state of existence, we meet only the people who are in harmony with us or those with similar vibrations. The souls on the lower levels, Burdick said, were not assigned there by virtue or by divine decree. It was simply the place where they would feel most at home. Okay? The higher spirits might be as hellish for these people as a concept of Wagner probably would be for the devotees hmm, of rock music. To understand better the first sentence of the above passage, we have to discuss reincarnation and the law of karma, which are out of place here. Suffice it to say here that in the afterlife, we are the only judge of ourselves. The law of karma is simply a question of cause and effect. Whatever we sow or plant, we harvest. It is not a question of reward or punishment. That is the wrong concept of karma. Karma is simply a consequence of actions that you have done in the past, whose consequences you're going to meet in a future life. That is karma. That's what Edgar Cayce calls it. That karma is simply meeting yourself, meaning you meet the consequences of your actions in the past in another life. There is no escaping karma. There's no escaping it. So better do only the good things so that good things will happen to you in the future. So karma is neutral. It has no moral or religious implication. Karma is not a moral law the way I look at it. It's more of a physical law, like cause and effect, or the law of gravitation. That is how I look at karma, like the law of physics, not a moral law of good and evil. And I think that is what Edgar Cayce also meant when he said that karma is simply meeting yourself, meaning meeting the consequences of your action that you've done in the past and meeting it now or in the future. Burdick also stated that he spent a great deal of his time doing rescue work. Now, this is very interesting. Assisting newcomers to the spirit world to adjust to their unfamiliar environment, especially those disoriented by a sudden or violent death. Many, he said, refused to believe that they are dead. Some needed treatment in rest homes, where after alternating periods of the therapeutic and wakeful slumber and wakeful growing awareness, they come to accept their new state. C.W. Leadbeater, Charles Leadbeater, a leading theosophist and a clairvoyant, gives us a more straightforward description of what life after death is like. He says, in it, there are many and great variations in the afterlife. But at least it is almost always happier than the earth life. As old scripture puts it, the souls of the righteous are in the hands of God, and there shall be no torment that can touch them. In the height, in the sight of the unwise, they seem to die, and their departure is taken for misery, and they're going from us to be utter destruction. But they are in peace. We must disabuse ourselves of antiquated theories that the dead man does not leap suddenly into the impossible heaven, nor does he fall into a still more impossible hell. There is indeed no hell in the old wicked sense of the word, and there is no hell anywhere else in any sense except such as a man makes for himself. Try to understand clearly that death makes no change in the man. He does not suddenly become a great saint or angel, nor is he suddenly endowed with all the wisdom of the ages. He is just the same man after his death as he was the day before. The only difference is that he has lost his physical body. In March 1977, Reader's Digest condensed the book of Dr. Raymond Moody entitled Life Afterlife. Dr. Moody was the first to study what is now known as near-death experience. In fact, he was the one who coined the word near-death experience to refer to people who have been declared dead and then came back to life. And he called it near-death experience. In that book, Dr. Moody, a doctor of medicine, described in a cold scientific manner the experiences of about 100 individuals who have experienced death and have come back to life. The remarkable thing about the stories he had heard was the similarity of their experiences after death. By the way, I personally met Dr. Raymond Moody, I think in the mid 80s or early 90s in Los Angeles at the Marriott Hotel when Dr. Raymond Moody gave a lecture about his work, Life After Death. And he has written about 5 other books that I didn't know. So I bought some of them in Marriott Hotel. And I had some minutes of talking to him. And I even invited him to come to the Philippines to lecture. But he's already old and he's not so powerful a speaker. And you know how Filipinos are, unless you're bombastic, you will not be listened to. But he makes a lot of sense. And he seems to be a very nice guy. So I was lucky to have a chance to meet Raymond Moody personally at Marriott Hotel in Los Angeles many years ago, 1985 or 1990. Okay, there was, for instance, the projection of the astral or spiritual body from the physical body in death. The heightening of consciousness or awareness while outside the physical body. Yeah, this is very true because when we are out of what is limits our perception of reality is our body. We cannot fly because of our body. We cannot see beyond the walls because of our body. We cannot go through the wall because of the body. There's so much limitation. So some philosophers say that the soul is imprisoned by the body. Okay, so consciousness or awareness while outside the physical body. The meeting with a being of light is another aspect of near-death experience. This being of light asks them profound questions and shows them a detailed review of their lives on earth and meeting with departed relatives and friends. If I remember right, two of the questions that are asked by this being of light is, how have you lived and how much have you loved? And then you are shown the effects of your words and actions on other people. Yeah, you have a review of the whole life that you have led. And here you will see all the things that you've done wrong and not done right. Wow. The experiences Dr. Moody investigated tended to confirm the ancient teachings in various religions and mystics, such as the Buddhists, the Theosophists, the Rosicrucians, the ancient Tibetans, Egyptians, and the like. Mystery schools of the ancient times. Dr. Moody describes below the typical death experience he has investigated, which has most, if not all, of various elements reported. From further studies, I learned that it's not always the same. There are many variations in what happens after death. But this is a typical see, scenario that Moody investigated. But then later on, other investigators found that there are variations to this. It's not always the same. Okay, so a man is dying as he reaches the point of greatest physical distress. He hears himself pronounced dead by his doctor. He now begins to hear an uncomfortable noise, a loud ringing or buzzing, and at the same time feels himself moving rapidly through a long, dark tunnel. After this, he suddenly finds himself outside his own physical body and sees his own body from a distance, as though he were a spectator. And he usually do not care what happens to that body being operated on or being mangled because of an accident. He becomes indifferent to it. It's another existence which is better for him. No pain, happiness. It's all that he feels there. After this, suddenly finds himself outside his own physical body and sees his own body from a distance, as though he were a spectator. He watches the resuscitation attempt from his usual vantage point. He notices that he still has a body, but one of a very different nature as the astral body, and with very different powers from the physical body he has left behind. Some others come to meet and help him. He glimpses the spirits of relatives and friends who have died. A loving, warm spirit, a being of light, asks him a question, non-verbally, to make him evaluate his life and help him along by showing him an instantaneous playback of the major events of his life. And it's complete, from birth to death. He is shown that, what he did wrong, what he did right. So, okay, let's continue. Some others come to meet and help him. He glimpses spirits of relatives and friends who have died. A loving, warm spirit of light appears before him, asking him two questions, non-verbally, to make him evaluate his life, and helps him along by showing him an instantaneous playback of the major events of his life. At some point, he finds himself approaching a sort of barrier or border, apparently representing the limit between earthly life and the next life. Yet he finds that he must go back to earth, that the time for his death has not yet come. Sometimes he is told about that. It's not your time. And he protests. He wants to be there in the afterlife. And the being says, no, you have to go back, because you still have a lot of things to do. At this point, he resists, for by now he is taken up with his experience experiences in the afterlife and does not want to return. He is overwhelmed by intense feelings of joy, love, and peace, despite his attitude, though he somehow reunites with the physical body and lives. Later, he tries to tell others, but he has trouble doing so. He can find no words adequate to describe those unearthly episodes. He also finds that others scoff or laugh at him or skeptical. So he stops telling them what he has experienced. Still, the experience affects his life profoundly. One notable effect of such an experience, according to Dr. Moody, has been to accept death as a natural event and he and to dispel the fear of death. Because it is the most common reaction of people who have died and lived again. They do not fear death anymore. But another and perhaps more important lesson imparted was the need to learn to love and help others in this life. This is always the message of many masters. All contact with the being of light invariably carry that same message. The same has been the teachings of all wise men, all mystics, all religious teachers of all ages, and all races and creeds. Surely they cannot all be wrong. Wow. I hope that you will think deeply about this and examine better our life on earth. Now, with all this pandemic thing and isolation, we can do this more, examine ourselves. So that's all for now. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining this short video presentation about glimpses in the afterlife. Maybe the next week, if we have time, we'll do a short broadcast also of why do ghosts appear? Why do spirits of the dead appear? And what do you do when confronted by a ghost? Okay. So this is Jaime Licauco signing off for Innerman Online. Thank you.